Colton Moore is moving to impeach Georgia District Attorney Fani Willis for her actions against former President Donald Trump. Moore said in a statement, "I'm not going to sit back and watch as radical left prosecutors weaponize their elected offices to politically target their opponents. As a Georgia state senator, I am officially calling for an emergency session to review the actions of Fani Willis."
On the resolution, the ayes are 107, the nays 85. Resolution is adopted.
With a majority vote nearly along party lines, House Republicans in Harrisburg impeached Philadelphia's Democratic District Attorney Larry Krasner.
Impeachment is a very serious matter, and we look forward to bringing all of the evidence during trial in the Senate and having District Attorney Larry Krasner answer for his misbehavior in office.
That misbehavior, critics claim, has caused Philadelphia's violent crime crisis. They accuse Krasner in part of abusing his power of prosecutorial discretion to choose which crimes and cases to pursue.
Of us not knowing our history is that we will not begin to see when history repeats itself. Us not actually knowing how we actually ended up in slavery prevent us from seeing it when it's about to happen again. You have to understand that we was not placed in slavery by bringing us over here on slave ships. When the Europeans came here, they came across black people.
Johnson was a free man with his own land. Virginia court records indicate a woman named Mary, and together they had 4 children. The Johnsons lived on and operated a 250-acre plantation along Virginia's eastern shore. Virginia law stated that landowners would receive 1 servant for each 50-acre plot of land they owned. The Johnsons claimed 5 servants, 4 of whom were white. A white neighbor named George Parker had the court free one of Johnson's indentured servants. Johnson asked the courts to re-examine their decision. The court did, and once again ruled in Johnson's favor. The servant, John Kasor, was placed back on the Johnson plan.
History as if, they only came into black people in America as slaves. Where is this brother who claimed 5 indentured servants, 4 of them, and he claimed them at the time before America had separated from England? See, they try to tell you your history incomplete so that you don't know what really happened. This is why critical race theory is under such attack, and even that is not told correctly.
70s, Anthony Johnson passed away and left his large land holdings to his children. But by then, Virginia had begun to change. With the African population in Virginia rapidly increasing, laws were being made to restrict any glimpse of freedom for Africans in the Virginia colony. In less than 5 years after Anthony Johnson's death, the same Virginia courts that had ruled in his favor a few years before ruled that African people were alien, were separate from Virginia's citizens, and therefore could not own land.
Whites had a thing you see consistently is these white people talk about being tough on crime, but one thing you never see is them talk about bringing jobs to the inner city. One thing you don't see them talk about creating funding for you to build opportunities and businesses for yourselves and your community. See, they're not going to target the real issues that create the crime because the purpose is to use the judicial system in order to re-enslave black people. You economically castrate them and then you force them into crime. Let's be clear, Black Americans, we have been through various forms of identifications on the U.S. Census. We went from Negroes, we went from African American, colored, to African American. So you have to understand this is what they did when they came to America. They did classification, and they classified us separate, classified tribes separately. we begin to identify as those separate tribes. That division allowed them to enslave tribe by tribe. Knowing our history, we can look back and find out that we was enslaved through their legal system. And if we know we was enslaved through the legal system, then we will be able to identify them targeting DAs and forcing them to prosecute mostly black people, to reincarcerate them, to make them fall up under the 13th Amendment, which says,
up to this point, I have not seen any evidence that D.A. Willis's actions or lack thereof warrant action by the Prosecuting Attorney Oversight Commission. But that will ultimately be a decision that the commission will make. Regardless, in my mind, a special session of the General Assembly to run around this law is not feasible and may ultimately prove to be unconstitutional. The bottom line is that in the state of Georgia, as long as I'm governor, we're going to follow the law and the Constitution, regardless of who it helps or harms politically. Over the last few years, some inside and outside of this building may have forgotten that. But
the Republican Party was the part of law and order as long as they was in power and they created the law and order in order to benefit them. Let's be clear about this. They're not about the Constitution, democracy, law and order. They only stood for that when it was beneficial to them, and they had the enormous amount of numbers to guarantee that throughout democracy they would stay in power.
Tonight, Governor Ron DeSantis announced that he has suspended State Attorney Monique Worrell of the 9th Judicial Circuit Court. The governor is citing neglect of duty. The governor claimed Worrell failed to implement mandatory minimum sentences and abused her discretion to not bring charges in some cases.
Prosecutors do have a certain amount of discretion about which cases to bring and which not. But what this state attorney has done is abuse that discretion and has effectively nullified certain laws in the state of Florida. That breaches her duties that she owes to the people of Florida under our state constitution and provides the basis for the suspension.
Now, she responded.
The reason why you see the banning of Black American history is so that you don't know what is occurring right now in present day time. So that you don't understand the weaponization of the 13th Amendment towards the blacks with the targeting of district attorneys all around the country. The reason why they trying to hide black history so much is because you don't know that you were sent into slavery due to the legal system, not due to them bringing you over here on slave ships. This is the very reason why they are hiding African American histories. African American black man actually owned the first African American slave in America.
Krasner in part of abusing his power of prosecutorial discretion to choose which crimes and cases to pursue.
The district attorney is currently acting in a legislative capacity by simply declaring entire sections of law void.
Tomorrow he may decide not to enforce the laws on assault or the laws on illegal gun possession. But then again, tomorrow has already arrived in Philadelphia.
Today,
to cover the rise in anti-democratic efforts by Republican officials in states across the country. We did so yesterday with that absolutely crazy story out of North Carolina where it appears Republicans or someone has launched a judicial commission investigation which may call for the removal of the sole black female justice on the state Supreme Court because she was caught speaking about the lack of diversity in the court system in an interview when she was asked about it.
to the United States Constitution provides that neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. And as you see, America has been through a mass incarceration targeting blacks disproportionate to the levels of crimes that blacks have committed. And as you see, the GOP continuously highlight crime in the inner city, but you have ever to see the GOP speak on placing jobs and opportunities in those same very areas that they talk about being crime infested. What they speak of is the policing of you so that they can implement the 13th Amendment and reincarcerate and re-enslave you. But this is not what black people are seeing, because we're allowing other people to give us our image of ourselves and to dictate our politics. This is why we need to meet and gather and learn our politics and how it applies to benefit our community, and why this bullshit diversity does not work.
Republicans stopping at nothing to just get rid of state judges they don't like. In April, Wisconsin held a high-stakes election for an open state Supreme Court seat, a seat that would determine if conservatives maintain control of that ultra-important high court. We covered it on the show. It got a lot of national attention. Justices in Wisconsin